affected media there and how they discussed what went on in the Balkans, but it's been a really great opportunity actually to hear about memory within the Balkans themselves. So it's quite nice to be on this panel. So thank you for including me. So as you sort of just mentioned, one of the most striking images in the research, and of course one of the most important aspects in the reportage is, of course, of the camps. And in one of the earlier archival trips I did, I was in the NDR archives in Germany, and there's this image that was shown all over TV on a very popular news show, Tagesschau, which is like a news show, and it showed Bosnian Muslim refugees at Buchenwald. They were in Germany, but carrying signs that said, Europe has not learned, obviously in German. And this was broadcast all over Germany. So, as you can imagine, this was a tremendous statement and was certainly targeted and meant to stoke emotion by a generation of Germans that had been contending in a very public manner through public discourse with the transgressions of their elders. So the Bosnian War was, of course, not the only conflict in the post-war world that involved accusations of genocide or persecution of ethnic groups. Obviously, what was going on in Rwanda was happening concurrently. But what went on in the Balkans, and because of the geographic position of the Balkans, was that it was obviously in Europe, the site of the Holocaust, and the Holocaust itself, obviously an event that shaped human rights debate and human rights documents and reaction in the post-war world, and also, of course, the Balkans themselves specifically were a site of tremendous violence during World War II, genocidal violence during World War II. So all of this comes together in sort of a very provocative cauldron in terms of a point or a turning point in memory discourse in Germany and, of course, elsewhere as well. My research, by the way, my dissertation research really focuses on Germany, but what I'm going to be discussing today, discusses Germany and Britain. So elements of the conflict in the Balkans, I need not say. Obviously, the nationalism, ethnic cleansing, and indeed, of course, the concentration camps, as you mentioned, instigated, I would say, a testing ground for many European states in regards to analyses and reflection on World War II and, of course, the Holocaust and the images and all that was evoked from that. In response to the war in Bosnia, politicians, pundits, NGOs referenced the horrors of the 20th century wars and specifically the Holocaust frequently. You see this in print and, of course, in broadcast media. And you see political pundits use media to do this, but you also see journalists themselves playing a major role in this discourse. And there are a few reasons. One of these is that, and there are a couple reasons, the war gave journalists probably more access to politicians and sites of conflict and even victims than a lot of previous conflicts had. There are a few reasons. There's technology, but also there was this sort of sharpened sophistication on the part of politicians in the region regarding PR and sort of bringing in journalists to hopefully further their cause. This did not always work very well, but even as you mentioned, Alan Little, but also and Laura Silber, both commented on that in their own work, that they had tremendous access to sort of major Bosnian Serb politicians, and that changed a little bit as it sort of became clear that it wasn't necessarily working in their favor. But early on, yes, there's tremendous amount of access, which was different. So my paper addressed how journalists used all of these sort of collective memory discourse in Germany and Britain to try to argue for and against intervention. And obviously, if you're doing a comparison of Germany and Britain, regardless of even these two countries, one thing you're thinking of is that who was in power at this time, who were in major positions in media, but also certainly and definitely in politics. And a lot of these people were former 68ers. In Germany, this is, I think, especially relevant because the 1968 generation in Germany were very pivotal in sort of calling into question, at least to some extent, not necessarily to a full extent, but to some extent, the involvement of the earlier generation in the Holocaust and coming to terms with the past, the Vergangenheitsbewältigung, which is this German word. So they are the ones, and I think it's important to keep that in mind, they're the ones that are in positions of power. And I won't get into it today, but especially when we look at the inner politics of some of the Green Party, for example, in Germany, this is especially relevant. There were major splits within the parties themselves on these issues and how memory could be acceptable, or was it acceptable to use references to the Holocaust to justify intervention, and was it, does the Holocaust mean that, for example, in Germany, one must pursue pacifist policies, or one must pursue interventionist policies in regards to human rights violations? So all that plays out in the political sphere as well, which my dissertation work also covers, although again, here I'll be talking primarily about the media. So I'm not going to get so much into the actual memory discourses of Britain and Germany today. We certainly don't have time. We're really running out of time. But I'm going to at least try to talk about the research itself and the actual media and what the media was saying, because those two topics are huge in and of themselves, and volumes are written about them. And I'd be happy to talk about that with anybody who wants to explore that and hasn't. Okay, so if we're talking first about Germany, obviously in 1992 you have a newly enlarged Germany, and this is in many ways a very exciting moment, but also a moment that provokes some concern, especially by some leftists in Germany, and I think Günter Grass is the most sort of famous of them, who expressed fears of this new unified Germany, and that it perhaps resembled or could resemble the militaristic state that obviously resulted in the Nazi regime, and that there was a comfort in sort of the split between West Germany and East Germany. And obviously the Bosnian War added a new pressure onto this, in part because you did have an influx of refugees that came into this country that was sort of figuring out how to reestablish itself as a unified state, and the economic pressures that were involved in that, which led to violence in and of itself. But obviously also in Germany especially, you see photographs and articles detailing concentration camps that are coming in through the media, and images of separation of women and children from men. And these are all very provocative images that have very direct correlation to the memory discourse that had been going on for decades already in Germany, but especially in the, I would say, from the sort of late 60s on, you have a very lively discourse, and there are a few touchstones that are especially provocative in public and popular media. So for example, in 1994 you have an editorial in the FAZ that says, "Responsibility in Germany comes from its unpopular past. Did we not have a special responsibility as Germans, so as a generation of German anti-nationalists that oppose any nationalist aggression?" I should also say, by the way, this is very, there is a split between West Germany and East Germany. This conceptualization is, of course, coming from West Germany. This plays out as the decade goes on, and when There is a intervention in Kosovo later on in the decade. The analysis itself of the differences in public opinion between East Germany and West Germany and the citizens in regards to this obligation, it's very different, and it has to do with different memory discourses that were going on in each state after World War II. So always keep this in mind.